Next up in the Fugitive Pack, I'm going to run you through my favourite weapon in the bundle, the M60 light machine gun. Now, I don't think there's ever been a shooter I've played where I've not enjoyed using this big clumsy beast, and Payday 2 is no different. This time though, it's not at all clumsy. It's also, interestingly, one of the few weapons which Overkill has been able to name directly from its real counterpart. Brought into military use around the same time as the R700 in the late 1950s, this monster of a weapon has been somewhat phased out of use by the M240 in recent years, but is still undoubtedly an iconic weapon of the era. Most commonly operated from mounted positions, it's fairly obvious just how much stopping power and weight it has behind it. This is translated perfectly into Payday 2, offering the joint highest LMG base damage at 120, but also the lowest fire rate at only 150 rounds per minute. Being an LMG, it also has the joint highest magazine belt size at 200, as well as hitting the second highest total ammo capacity in the class, that being 400 base. Given its higher damage and lower fire rate, this makes it probably the most ammo efficient LMG in the game, and as I'll explore later, it's also surprisingly the most precision orientated weapon within the class. The M60 certainly looks the part, with a brutish design that is longer barrel to stock than the KSP, but not quite as chunky. It also has much more of a clean gunmetal finish when compared to most of the other LMG options, carrying a large dark metal ammo belt container. Attachment wise, the M60 has a decent array of options. You can equip the short barrel if you're having some trouble controlling this monster, coming at the cost of some accuracy. Personally, I rate the kick on it as standard, so don't love the idea of taking stat trade-offs when customizing this weapon. In terms of options unique to the M60, you also get the choice between the modernised, tactical and tropical foregrips. The first two again offering a trade-off between accuracy and stability, which, as I say, because I'm very happy with the base feel of this weapon, I would recommend avoiding. Instead, I choose to go for the tropical foregrip, if predominantly only for the sweet jungle aesthetic. The barrel extension and gadget options here are standard to all LMGs, so I'd recommend you slap on the competitor's compensator and LED combo, seeing as concealment isn't really a consideration. Finally, as with all LMGs, the bipod is a worthwhile pickup for holding down choke points or going for those longer range kills. As mentioned earlier, the M60 has a relatively low rate of fire within the usually bullet hosing LMG category. Not only does this make it more ammo efficient, it also makes the weapon easier to control, as its comparative stability is functionally a lot higher than other options in the class. In my experience, it's probably the most generally accurate light machine gun in the game, meaning that you'll find yourself firing a lot less ammo into the aether than with other LMGs. This in mind, let's consider its damage category and how many bullets it takes to deal with enemies on the hardest difficulties. With the Fast and the Furious perk and my previously walked through mods, you can get the M60 to a comfortable 128.1 damage. This means that you'll be one-shotting light swats and shields as well as two-shotting heavy swats when you land headshots on death sentence difficulty. Pretty monstrous for an LMG. Tasers and cloakers will be going down in the more standard 4 and 3 headshots respectively, but just to put this into perspective, you will be firing more than 9 shots a second, so don't expect resistance, even on the hardest difficulties, to stand for very long. The thing is, you'll find these kinds of numbers are common for most LMGs, so why am I waxing lyrical specifically about the M60? Well, the important difference is, like I mentioned, you'll actually be able to put those numbers into practice because of its manageable rate of fire and general ease of control. Theoretically, after shooting for anywhere around 5 seconds, the M60 actually has the lowest DPS out of the LMG class. But looking at it from more of an actual empirical standpoint, based off what I've played, and not just looking at the number as it is, its greater application over range, front-loaded damage, and functionality makes it, for me at least, the most overall consistent LMG in the game, contested only by the KSP and Buzzsaw for death sentence options. When taking into account the power of something like Anarchist and Frenzy and the fact that the M60 excels in the damage category, I think this decision becomes even easier, as the higher the base, the greater the increase in damage thanks to the Frenzy multiplication, making this a potentially 180 damage weapon straight out of the box. Despite my clear love for this weapon, it's only fair that I balance this video by considering its downsides. Where I suggest it struggles the most is dealing with exceedingly high health units, particularly those death sentence bulldozers. Even though this gun has lower DPS over extended durations, because it can two-shot most standard enemies, it will actually kill more rapidly than most of its faster firing cousins, so you won't really notice the difference. That is, until you run into a dozer. If you find yourself face to face with the astronomical 48,000 health pool of the Death Sentence exclusive minigun dozer, you will experience the struggles of this reduced DPS firsthand. It's hardly the worst weapon out there for dealing with high health opposition, it copes well enough, just bears mentioning that it is the worst LMG in this class for these encounters specifically, a necessary balancing factor without which the M60 may be the undisputable best weapon in the game. Overall, even with the M60's bulldozer woes accounted for, when we consider the renaissance that LMGs are having within the top tier 1-down Death Sentence builds, the M60 is absolutely one of the best choices out there. As such, it receives a well-deserved Death Sentence rating with a 1-down viable seal of approval to boot. For me, it's probably reason enough to suggest picking up the Fugitive pack, but if you're an experienced KSP user, the difference really comes down to the M60 being marginally easier to use, something I doubt you'll be particularly interested in. This means that before I can give a full verdict on the Fugitive DLC, I have to take an in-depth look at the final unlocked weapon, the Hulk pistol, which is the topic of my next weapon review, coming up very soon. Hopefully, I will see you all there.